We're going to be able to open it up for Q&A for our speakers so that you'll be able to hear from them. So we'll hear from Micah Miranda with the City of Chandler, as well as Angela Creedon with Intel and Art Taylor with PayPal regarding their approach to some of these workforce issues. And this event would not be made possible if it wasn't for Intel, Air Products, ASU, and Wells Fargo. So without further ado, I am going to introduce today's moderator, Jonathan Schmidt with ASU. He is the Assistant VP of Educational Outreach and Student Services. Prior to coming to ASU, John practiced law at Aiken Gum, Strauss, Hauer, and Bell as a litigation counsel, North America for Fortune 500, Fortune 150 companies in Houston. In January 2019, Governor Ducey appointed John as a member of the Workforce Arizona Council. So today's topic is obviously of particular interest for him. So please put your hands together and welcome Jonathan.
Good morning, everyone, and on behalf of Arizona State University, welcome to this to the Innovation Center. Angela can tell us more about it than anybody else that I can think of. But we really are. We're grateful to have you here in this particular space to talk about this really important topic. And given that this space is actually a partnership between ASU and the City of Chandler, it's appropriate that we would start now by hearing from Micah Miranda, the city's Economic Development Director. Micah works closely with the mayor and city council, city manager, and staff from city departments to facilitate economic development projects that enrich the business operating environment. He leads Chandler's Economic Development Division, whose focus is to enhance a thriving and successful local economy through business attraction, retention, entrepreneurial development, and tourism. Prior to joining the City of Chandler in 2014, Micah was the City of Maricopa's Economic Development Director and worked as a business attraction manager at the Arizona Commerce Authority. Micah, there you are. Welcome. Thanks so much for taking time. Help us out.
Absolutely.
Get us started.
All right, we'll get going here. Good morning, everybody. Kind of just jump right into this a little bit. So workforce, everybody's favorite topic these days. And it seems things become popular when there's an issue, right? So Arizona has long focused on workforce, but Chandler in particular has made it a core driver of our economic development strategy going back a number of years, probably about 50 years. 19 some years ago when we started laying out general plans, really became solidified in 1980 with the 1980 general plan, which laid out employment corridors, what types of businesses we wanted to attract, and really focus on technology, innovation. And we've been successful. So when we look at Chandler's educational attainment compared to the state and the national averages, we're doing really well. 45% of our residents have a bachelor's degree or higher. Obviously, that translates into higher income. So this is something that we track real closely. It's something we provide emphasis on, and it's part of Mayor and Council strategic framework. Look for opportunities for partnerships with other entities. How this has affected not only Chandler, but the rest of the East Valley in this targeted approach to economic development focused on workforce development is that 23% of our workforce is in high-tech industries. Compare that to East Valley at 14% and 10% for the national average. So we're very committed to innovation economy workers and the talent that needs to drive those. And the reason why we're focused on these types of industries is because they have higher multiplier effect, higher return on investment. So for every one innovation job, there's generally a spinoff in jobs created elsewhere, ratio of 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 or so. So it just depends on the type of job, industry, but it really can help drive economies and prosperity for all communities. And when we look back at historical numbers here, and I really want to focus on the past 5 years or so, because a lot of changes occurred. So obviously, Chandler's in blue, Arizona's in the orange, and the U.S. average is probably gray. My wife's like colorblind, so that is inaccurate. No. But we were, before the pandemic, we were bouncing along at about 3.6%. Anything under 4% unemployment is really, really good. They basically call it zero unemployment. If you want to find a job, you can. Obviously, when the pandemic hit, it was a huge spike, up to about 14%. but when you look at Chandler's unemployment line and how our workforce responded, it shot down really quick. A lot of this was because our workforce wasn't tied to those industries most impacted: hospitality, retail, restaurants. Yes, those industries make up a lot of Chandler's economy, but they're being driven by the other innovation economy workers that were less impacted. So we came out of it really quick, and we continue to come out of it. And so we kind of, for about a year, tagged along here just over under 6%. Now we're down to about 2%. So we're at unemployment levels not even seen before the pandemic. That can be attributed to a lot of things. A lot of people left the workforce, right? Didn't go back. A lot of strain on employer hiring. What we've seen is it's been older workers, those who could retire. They didn't want to go back to work. They didn't have to go back to work. They had the means to settle down. So that's what we're seeing. So even the national average, you're under 4%. Or excuse me, the state, under 4%. National average is a tick low. So this is kind of the crux of the conversation: is how do we continue to drive economic prosperity at a micro and macro level? And I'm going to go really fast, Terry. I promise. I know I only have 10 minutes, but I'll dive into this a little bit deeper. But so unemployment is great, 2%. You want a job, you can go find a job across any sectors. But what we're seeing is somewhat worrisome. This is from Arizona Board of Regents. I thought it was very interesting, and it shows college enrollments 2 and 4 years. And what you're seeing here is an overall decline in college completion and enrollments. Now, there's a lot of reasons people can take from this and apply different perspectives to cost of education, ROI, but this is worrisome nonetheless. Post-second, and this is not just college degrees, this is post-secondary education certificates as well. We've seen a decline in those as well. So think CTE, continuing training education opportunities, trade schools. We're seeing less people go into these fields. But the problem is the demand for an educated workforce is increasing and not slowing down. We need more people to go into education, whether it's CTE, bachelor's, or even associate's degrees at the community college level. This is the trouble. We'll see here, but this is the 2-year, the total decline as a state. We've gone from about 27% in 2015 down to 17.9% enrollments. That's a challenge, right? Especially because we're behind the national average. We need to graduate about 15,000 bachelor, associate students every year just to catch up to the national average. We are trailing the country in educated workforce. And we've got to make up ground. In Chandler, we're in a different situation, but economies don't follow municipal boundaries. In fact, I love to tout Chandler. I think we're the best at everything, but people move in and out of Chandler on a daily basis. Don't figure, right? Private public schools perform very well. What draws people to Chandler? Part of our allure for families, part of our feedback cycle. Basis charter schools, Great Hearts, Chandler Unified, Kyrene, they all produce really qualified students who are ready for college and other educational opportunities. So this is kind of where it starts. And at the city, we partner very closely with the districts and charter schools on their curriculum, making sure that they're familiar with what's going on in the community, what our business needs are. We work very closely with the chamber folks on getting that communication back to our educational partners, so we can continue to drive this. This is critical. Keep an eye on this number. At higher education, so we're obviously in the ASU Chandler Innovation Center, really focused on entrepreneurism. We have some additional programming taking place with the UVA right now for areas, specifically applied sciences. So you're going to be seeing some news coming out about U of A shortly, increasing their presence here in Chandler. Chandler Gilbert Community College. Anybody from Chandler Gilbert here this morning? Maybe online. They are huge partners of ours. Between them and also the Maricopa Corporate College, which can provide tailored training to our business partners. We work very closely with both of those entities to make sure that the workforce is there to drive our economic vitality. And in kind of some of the things, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just want people to think about some things. Our state universities are being severely crunched on funding. We need to think about increasing state funding for higher education. I know that's kind of a taboo word here in Arizona, but it has strong return on investment for the state. And we're working with some of our partners regionally and across the state to identify and flesh out what really this means. Some of the new legislation, speed to market for bachelor's degrees in the college system is a huge opportunity and a significant cost savings for our students. We need to drive that. This is an area where I think the business community it has an opportunity to do more. From my perspective, what I see a lot when we're talking with businesses is the speed at which the educational institutions, especially the large ones, are able to react and pivot is not as fast as what the businesses need. So what I would suggest is, we really got to take a look at bringing back a lot of these issues are at the statewide level, programs that support training, apprenticeship programs at the statewide level, kind of fallen away. And that could be from plumbers to framers, across all sorts of construction initiatives. We need to be more organized in those areas and help educate students at the high school level that there are other opportunities for employment. But the business community really needs to take the lead on that. And then everything in education has been proven to have a positive ROI. So if we're going to invest in these, we need to do it in those areas that are strategic. We need to focus on opportunities that we know are coming. AI, Maricopa Community College is really involved in that area. Software engineering, that's going to drive a lot of our education. That's really going to drive a lot of our economic vitality, being able to provide those job training opportunities. We've got to be specific and targeted about it. You can't be everything to everybody. The cost is great, but the positive ROI is there for strategic investment. That's longer than I had. Terry, turn it over.
Thank you, Micah. Appreciate that. And anyway, we'll get to have Q&A at the end and circle and really tie some of those things together, which are going to be so important. Next, grateful to hear from Angela Creedon, my colleague who is now at Intel and is working as their Arizona Public Affairs Manager for County, City, and Higher Education. Angela is responsible for developing and implementing strategic engagements with city and county officials, as well as Arizona-based higher education institutions to promote and enhance a favorable business environment that will allow Intel to continue thriving into the future. Angela spent many years working in community and government relations and is presently serving as the chair of Fighter Country Foundation, an organization dedicated to serving the men, women, and families of Luke Air Force Base. Angela has a Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of Phoenix, certification in Economic Development from the University of Oklahoma, and an advanced certificate in Corporate Community Relations from Boston College. Please welcome Angela.
Jonathan, but everybody's calling me John. So work with John. I spent 11 years at Fargo State University. It was a pleasure to work there. But as he alluded to earlier, this building, I walked this building when it was literally like a public works building that was no longer being used by the city of Chandler and had a chain link fence around it. And now today, based on the leadership of ASU and the city of Chandler, look at it today, it's phenomenal that we can be here. So great partnership, without a doubt. Pleasure to speak to you today about education, workforce, and how that specifically impacts Intel. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about Intel. Many of you have already heard, and you know about the expansion, but Intel did announce a $20 billion investment in the city of Chandler in building 2 new fabrication plants, or what we call fabs. With that comes a great deal of investment, not just in our local economy, but also a statewide impact. You can see here, we have $10 to $15 billion it costs to actually build one of those fabrication plants. That leads to construction jobs. There's additional suppliers that are supported by this effort. And all of that requires a skilled and trained labor force. That is absolutely critical to our success. I like to think of Intel, and I know many people have heard me say this, it is the great American story. We started Intel in 40 years ago, right here in Chandler. It's grown, developed, we've built new fabrication plants here. And why have we done that? We've done it because it's a great place to do business. We've done it because we have a great partnership with the city of Chandler, and the city of Chandler has been instrumental in our success, whether it's infrastructure, economic development, or Micah has to hear from me daily, weekly, probably more often than he would like. But Chandler's been a great place to do business, and we look forward to not only expanding now, but continuing to expand in the future. That would not be done without all of those partnerships, but also without a great workforce. We need those graduates from the high school level through all the way to our PhDs. Now, a lot of people say high school level. Well, we've changed a little bit about how we're looking at things. We have a unemployment rate that's probably an all-time low. And with that, you start to look at things a little bit differently. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're responding to the decline in unemployment numbers and how we're trying to recruit in more people at Intel. Intel's the size right now of 6 American football fields. We have right now 12,000 employees. So right at about 12,000 employees. And with the 2 new fabrication plants, we'll add an additional 3,000 employees. You can imagine this is really important to us, how well we get high-skilled labor, well-educated labor. And we have contributed back the revenue from global semiconductor, it shows there $440 billion. It just continues to grow. Our annual economic impact is over $8.6 billion to the state of Arizona, and that's a 2019 number. So that's without even looking at the continued investment that we'll be making. So we have the 3,000 jobs that we'll add here at Intel, but we also have 3,000 construction jobs. So that takes our trades, that takes our skilled labor. It's going to take all of us in it together to really address those workforce needs. Our future investments, I mentioned at $20 billion. I anticipate that's going to continue to grow. Each fab costs around 10 to 15 billion to build, right around $10 billion to build. So we're going to continue investing back into Chandler. We're going to continue investing in our local economy, but we're also going to support a number of educational programs that will support our growth. One thing that's really important to note, Micah had a slide up there, and he talked a little bit about our local education and how important it is. We really will focus a great deal on STEM, and you can imagine why. STEM education is critical. We need to start at the beginning, right? We need to capture our youth when they're young, so they're entering into STEM education. When we go to recruit, the gap we have is really in our bachelor's degree. So we really are looking at hiring more and more students that have graduated with a bachelor's degree. That's a critical area for us. We hire more students from Arizona State University, and I'm not saying that because we both work there. It's true. We actually hire more students from Arizona State than any other university. We are looking to grow that. I'm hoping that we can get the numbers up with U of A, with GCU. That's part of my responsibility, and I'm working closely with both of those institutions as well, and NAU as we look to recruit more and more engineers. We're looking at the hard sciences. We're looking at chemical engineering, computer science and engineering, computer engineering, electrical, mechanical. So you can see we really, really need to focus in on that effort. But we do hire more at Arizona State. They're local. And believe it or not, when I was doing a lot of corporate work in my past, we found that when you recruit local, they like to stay local. So our retention rate for those types of graduates seems to be much higher. So we're going to really focus in on our university partnerships, really trying to grow those, develop those. But I don't want to miss the opportunity to really highlight how we're reevaluating things. We're going to also look at skilled labor. So where there was a position in the past with our technicians, and we're going to be recruiting and hiring a lot of technicians, we really focused in on they still had to have their bachelor's degree. Well, now we're reevaluating that. We're saying, if you have that technical background, you have the ability to work at Intel, we're going to evaluate that and we're going to consider that in our hiring process. So we decided to step up and try to look at some new programs. One of the first programs is actually still in the works. It's coming soon, and it's our Mesa Community College boot camp. So what the boot camp is, it's going to be a 2-week program. We're going to have a morning session, an afternoon session, and we're going to train our labor force in being a technician. We're going to have heavy emphasis on hiring females. We would really like to see more and more female technicians in our technical roles. We really would like to see those numbers grow. Of course, we're anxious to hire any and all skilled labor, but in this case, we would really like to target a lot of our female population. You may ask yourself, well, why would we go after the females? The reason is because many of them don't see this as a great career opportunity. They just don't consider it. And so you want to give them the opportunity to really think about, what does Intel offer in that technician program that I should consider? Maybe they're coming back into the workforce after having taken a break from their careers. Intel offers great programs. We have daycare. We have great benefits. We have a great reentry program. And so we're really going after a lot of female technicians and hoping that we can recruit more in that area. That actually applies across the field to all of our engineering and technical programs, but it is something we're really going to focus in on the boot camp. But if you know of anybody who might be interested, we're going to launch that this spring, and it's open. It's a great partnership with our community colleges. We're going to look to grow those types of programs. You can see here that our technicians, the STEM certification, associate's, bachelor's degree, depends on where you're coming into Intel. Those are very, very critical. If you have that relevant work experience and you find that you're technically, you have that aptitude, it's really a great way for you to come into Intel. And I'm going to speak from the heart. It is a great company to work for. So if you know anybody interested, please send them my way. Engineers, I mentioned before just how much we're looking to recruit in this area, but specifically in that bachelor's degree area, we really need more bachelor's degrees. And then in our business functions, we're always looking towards our supply chain, our human resources, marketing. I just looked at the numbers the other day, and while we're recruiting a substantial number of engineers, we still need the associated functions to keep the business running. So that's critical for us as well. So talking to you about it.
He's talking to you.
Yeah, he's got his son coming out with a business law degree, and you never know, there could be definitely an opportunity at Intel that he might want to explore. So I talked a little bit about the manufacturing boot camp coming at Mesa Community College. I highly recommend it. But another great partnership that Intel explored was working closely with the Maricopa Community College District, specifically Chandler Gilbert, on our artificial intelligence program. And it is the first of its kind in the country where you can get an associate's degree in AI. So what we're doing is we're owning our own destiny by creating programs that are going to allow us to really recruit that talent into Intel. And so we've worked closely with our community colleges. We continue to work closely with Chandler Unified School District on all STEM programs. But we believe that if we want to see that talent coming forward, we really need to do our part as a company in supporting those educational opportunities. And then I mentioned our relaunch and returnship program, and that's something that we think will be highly successful as we look to bring people back into the workforce and have taken the delay for whatever the reason may be. So we're excited about the future, excited to be here in Chandler. I don't want to miss an opportunity, however, to say it's, you know, we talk about the workforce, we're talking about education. There's so many other components to being able to locate and grow within a community. Workforce housing is going to continue to be a critical issue for all of the companies here. We need more entry-level housing. We're going to need more, you know, moving up in terms of housing. No matter how you look, and I don't know if any of you have young people in your home, but I know that my sons would like to buy a home. Affordability has become a very big factor. Supply is not keeping up with demand. Our Gen Zers and our millennials, a lot of people think they don't want to buy homes. I believe they do. And I think that if we don't address the affordable housing issue and more workforce housing is really what we're looking at, it's going to impact all of our companies. So it's something I just want to put on the radar. We talk about education, we talk about the workforce, but if we don't talk about housing, where they're going to live, how many of them are going to rent, how many of them are going to own, it's something that's certainly going to have a huge impact as companies look to locate here. So Micah may not agree on that one, but I think that's certainly going to be a factor for us. All right, I'll wait for my follow-up question.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. There's a reason that at ASU that it's been very strategic that now the Fulton Schools of Engineering is the largest engineering college in the nation. Again, with what Intel is doing, and again, bringing TSMC and Arizona with the new economy initiative, everything is, again, it's just driven by workforce and being able to provide, anyway, educated employees who can stay here. We're now so grateful to hear from Art Taylor, and Art is the VP of Global Compliance, but you all better be, anyway, good people. Okay? You've got Art coming in here. Anyway, the VP of Global Compliance Investigations at PayPal. He leads a team of over 400 industry experts in charge of risk and compliance investigations in North, South, and Central America, ensuring PayPal fulfills its commitment to combat money laundering, terrorism financing, and other related financial crimes. In addition to his role in designing compliance strategy and execution plans, Art is the site leader of PayPal's office here in Chandler. As site leader, Art is responsible for bringing PayPal's values of collaboration, wellness, innovation, and inclusion to life for employees and members of the community. Art has published articles and presented at numerous forums and conferences, sharing his experience and passion for leadership and organizational development. Art earned his MBA in Global Business Management and his BA in International Business. He's a former college athlete, still enjoys sports and staying active. Although he is a native to California, and we all know that can be forgiven. He's anyway, currently lives here in Phoenix with his wife and twin girls. Please welcome Art Taylor.
I do not have slides up here, but I have some things that'll help keep me organized. And I was just sharing, I hate hearing bios. It's like having people sing happy birthday to you. So thanks for putting up.
Is it your birthday?
It's not my birthday.
Okay.
Although I do like birthday shots. I'm gonna Libra, October 1st. For you guys later. Thanks for being here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about the work that PayPal is doing in the Valley. And I really want to get to some of the Q&A because I think the dialogue about this topic is just so important for us to be able to share and talk through. So just a couple things that I would share, give you a little bit of background. So PayPal, again, is the company that started in the mid to late 90s on how you can send payments via email. And so that has quickly kind of grown or blossomed, if you will, to a company now that does about 40,000 transactions every single day. We're doing nearly right around $1.2 trillion in overall spend that's going through the PayPal process or through their pipes every single day. There's a combination of companies that make up PayPal. So You may have heard of Venmo or Braintree or Zoom or Hyperwallet or Zettle. All those things are PayPal companies that really come together to create an economic, both ecosystem, but also a payments ecosystem that can help people throughout the world. So the work that I do and the opportunity that I have here in Chandler is really overseeing our sites that we have. So we have 2 buildings here, one in Chandler and one in Scottsdale. Our Chandler office fits about 2,500 or so folks. And right now we have a close to 3,000 employees that call the Chandler area home. Given the fact that we're mainly virtual right now, we have the opportunity to be able to do that. So over the past few years, again, as was noted, we've seen a lot of different things happening from an employment standpoint with our teams. So we definitely had to grow. We were a company that saw our business absolutely boom in 2020 as more people were home, fewer people were out able to spending cash. There were more digital payments and things like that happening. You add into cryptocurrency, you add into all those other digital forms of currency that's happening all over. That created a great opportunity for PayPal to really be able to fit that need or bring more people to that area. One of the things that we saw, though, is that it also created an opportunity for us to really think about how we hire, who we hire. We've always had a strategy that's been about diversification or diversity in our hiring, but it's not necessarily the boxes that you check. It's more about the perspectives that you bring, the different work that you do. So part of what we do in every single site that there's a PayPal building, we try to have a co-located kind of strategy where we have people that do just about every job that you can do within PayPal in that location. Gives us an opportunity to have people that are providing services, maybe legal work. Most of the folks that work for me are attorneys, so just in case intel doesn't work out. There's a lot of different opportunities that we have in one location. So it gives us a chance for us to be able to have people that are helping customers, maybe on servicing side, sales, whether it's something that's working from an engineering standpoint. Any of those things are typically co-located. It gives us an opportunity and a chance to really think about diversity of how do we take that information, spread it across, and make sure it's really working well. If we're developing a tool to help our customer, we're able to work with the employees that are actually working and helping those customers to develop that tool. So things of that nature really helps us as we think about our teams that we have. So as a part of that, though, what we've seen is that can become harder and harder, especially in some of the items that were cited. When you think about how can you have a location that can necessarily have jobs that may start anywhere from $45,000 a year on the way up to where we really focus in on equity as well. So it can be a pretty profitable place. So, but if you have things like that, it can be difficult. So you need something that's also able to have a community of people that are able to start there. It's also a place that we really try to continue to encourage people to grow their career. You can do that in a lot of different ways, but typically it's going to be through skill building and experience building. So we try to support people in additional education and finding what's going to be their career path. And that's really only possible if you have a place for people to move into and to step into. So there's a lot of different opportunities there, but it can become far more complex of how we're able to do that, just considering our teams. So as you think about some of the different programs, and I know we just heard about some of the Intel's doing, which I want to talk more to you about some of those. We just started a program last year that we refer to as our technical career pathways. And so as I mentioned, a career path is so critically important for folks, but at times there's those invisible ceilings that makes it really tough for a person to go from, let's say, sales to maybe a more technical role if they want to code, or from servicing a customer to a legal role or financial crimes, things of that nature. So we've created our technical career pathways program where we took 30 of our employees and we moved them into 2 different types of programs. We moved them into programs that are specific in Java coding and engineering from that standpoint, or software engineering. And then we also moved them into programs more specific to product management, so the life cycle of a product and development and management of that. Now, these roles typically are going to be things that require very specific degrees from different institutions, or at minimum, a lot of hands-on experience in being able to do that. So the programs that we were able to create were to move people into an internship. And in this internship, or prior to the internship, they're in an immersive training program where they're going from anywhere from 4 to 6 months where we train them, then moving them into an internship for upwards of a year. This really gives an opportunity not only to reinforce, hey, how can you look to find talent in a different place, but we're also training people in a career or in an area that otherwise might have been difficult to go after, especially while working a full-time job. So while they're in this position or in this role, we pay them their regular wage that they had, and then we're able to move them into a more permanent role in a more technical area. So we just started this last year. Proud to say we've already had close to half of our folks transition into full-time roles. We're still working through quite a bit of that. And we had a lot to still learn, right? We were not able to, part of the intent is that we were looking for diversity. Just as you mentioned, looking to have more women and people of color move into more technical roles. We didn't quite, meet some of the things that we were looking to try to achieve in diversity and scale that we were looking for. But we were able to bring quite a few people that weren't in those areas before into that area. So we'll look to continue to do that, learn from some of our partners in the Valley, and see how we can do that more. One of the other things I just wanted to highlight or share or talk through a little bit was also in thinking about some of the impacts we've seen through the pandemic. So as I mentioned, we were able to move into a more virtual work environment. That's had a lot of great benefits for us in a lot of different ways. So one, our employees were able to really take advantage of the balance that created initially. And I think a lot of people appreciated that, not only balance, but thinking about their own wellness and their health. We instituted wellness days within our company as a part of our benefits package. So in addition to all the holidays that we recognize, in addition to the vacation process that we have, and we have a what we refer to as our track-free vacation. A lot of people hear unlimited vacation. It is not unlimited, but we don't really focus on how much time you take. We focus on the balance and contributions to the company. But with those things, we added in wellness days. And this was our ability to be able to reinforce today is the day we're going to be closed. We're going to shut down, we're going to stop, we're going to do the things you need to recharge. And that was really well received by our employees. And what we saw though, was that there were ebbs and flows in how people felt about being remote. Initially, people probably felt pretty good about it. And then after a few months passed, myself included, my daughters were home doing second grade virtually. I wanted to get back into an office. It didn't really work for me. And so we saw a lot of employees say the same thing. Hey, I really want to get back into the office. And we look to try to be able to help people be able to do that. So meeting them where they are has been really important, whether that's wellness days, whether that's virtual time, whereas the hybrid working model has been really important. Also, you think about the cost of homes and things of that nature, the cost of commuting times. It's been good to be able to provide that balance to our employees. And so we're still looking for ways that we can find the right balance for us as a company. Again, having that co-located piece that we're looking for, we'll also be able to help people from a virtual work environment standpoint. And then just one other thing to mention, the work that we continue to do in the community. So we really try to focus in on, and we understand that our employees expect for us to live our values through assisting them in doing the things that they think is also important. We have found it has been a huge retention effort for us not only to have similar or shared values as a company with our employees, and so whether their emphasis is in doing things in the community, helping children or helping youth or helping people in need, whatever we can do to kind of bring those things together. So we have boosted or been able to bolster our work that we do to support our employees in the common community, adding additional volunteering time that we'll pay for, that will also help to contribute to any of the nonprofits they have. And that's been a big thing our employees have mentioned. So just a couple of things that we're doing from a benefit standpoint. The last thing that I'll just mention from a benefits perspective is obviously health and wellness has been so critically important. So we're trying to find the ways to really focus in on broad spectrum wellness. So whether that's financial wellness or whether that are different things that people are thinking about from a health standpoint. On a financial wellness perspective, we have done things to be able to go in and ensure that every single one of our employees are shareholders and understanding the value of being a shareholder at a company, also looking at wages and also making sure that we have financial literacy training and education for our employees. And that has been a big deal for our folks, especially here in the Valley. All right, I ran through a lot with no slides, so if you follow that, I think I'm transitioning back.
Okay. All good. Yes, you stay on up. Actually, can we invite everybody to come on up? And we've had a few questions that have been pre-submitted, and from those of you out in the audience. And so let's start with those, and then we'll just open it up to those that are here in the room. BJ, you may get some questions as well on the link that you can share with us. So the first question that we have here is, what are the top ways that the city or your company have been able to attract employees for both experienced and entry-level positions?
Sure.
All right, so in attracting employees, we have a number of opportunities. So employee referrals, people who have heard about Intel, understand Intel is a great place to work. But we've also done some targeting and marketing campaigns to really try to recruit. And we've been very specific. So as we talked about women and people of color and trying to attract, we're trying to go into those audiences and specifically target to where they might hear our message and understand what we have to offer. We also go to a number of career fairs. I think we're probably at ASU every career fair they have. We were just there last week, and so we're recruiting heavily within our universities. I mentioned Micah will be at U of A as well, GCU. So we're going into career fairs to try to target some of those recent graduates, as well as those MBA, master's level and PhD students as well.
And we're bringing people over from California. But anyway, in addition, but it's a difficult challenge, right? Anyway, when you have unemployment, it's under 4%. So Micah, you want to speak to that as well?
Yeah, I'll just use an anecdotal story. So we obviously touch students across all the advanced manufacturing, advanced services, software, PayPal. And so on the economic development side, what we have to do is really tailor towards that specific business need. And one of those needs, we had a large company looking at Chandler, and they were really interested in developing the pipeline early on. So they could take somebody that just graduated college and put them through their workforce pipeline. But they wanted to have a partner, so we collaborated with this company and Chandler Gilbert Community College to work on a career development process for them that allows them to identify talent early, generate relationships with those individuals, and then ultimately hire those individuals once they got their associate's degree and greater. So that's one example. The other example is, Angela and I have worked together for a long time now, but we have a lot of partnerships. And a lot of times businesses are obviously busy running their own businesses, and they don't know what opportunities or support is out there. So we will work with universities to really help explain what their talent pipeline is going to look like, what they're delivering, how they can get in front of those folks in a much more generic sense as opposed to very specific targeted matriculation approach. So we look at it on a case-by-case basis every time. Every business has different needs. And so, I think that the best thing that Chandler and Arizona has going on is everybody gets along and is always willing to kind of pitch in and add a lending hand to businesses looking to establish or even grow their.
Oh, and that was one important thing that you had on your slide is just the need for businesses to communicate what their needs are.
Yeah.
And when that's communicated, then you can have that kind of situation that you're talking about, right? Working with the school district on the CTE part, right? Anyway, if there are certificates that can be developed, whether it's with the school district, with EVIT, to provide some of those jobs. Angela, you talked about the need for bachelor's degrees as well. So again, working with the community colleges as well, same kind of thing with Chandler Gilbert is just such a gem in this area, and with the universities to be able to drive anything you want to say following up on that.
I would just say, Arizona's pretty welcoming, extremely welcoming. So if businesses have needs, I'm almost sure of a competitor or somebody in the public sector who's worked on this issue. So just reach out, and they're probably going to be more than happy to provide a lending hand.
Thank you very much. And Art, anyway, you talked about not only looking outward, anyways, you talked about filling those jobs, but also what you've been doing internally, which I think is really, just interesting as well. But anything else you want to say in terms of how are you hiring those experienced and entry-level positions?
I think I think the one only thing to add from an attraction standpoint is trying to hire before the need. It can still be a little bit of a runway to hire. So as much as we can possibly think about what roles are even in existence, the partnerships you can form, careers and job placement is still a lot about networks. And so creating the right networks ahead of time, letting people know, the work that we do and things of that nature is really important. Outside of the traditional ideas of our brand, I think is important for us.
Appreciate that. Okay, we have a second question here. It says that recruiting talent can be difficult in normal circumstances. What tools have you used to recommend and find a fitting candidate pool?
Yeah, I think it's, I'll maybe, I just had a conversation about how we can rethink the interview process. And so I don't know if you guys have seen this already, but people are doing interviews on TikTok and things of that nature. So
Dance.
I don't think you do, but there can be like music in the background.
There's no way I'm getting a job.
But you can show personality with the way you get. But I think the big part, I think the onus really is on the hiring company at this point, to find new and innovative ways to seek out talent and not to be maybe as traditional as we were, and that sort of thing. And I think it's probably the one process in all of our businesses that really hasn't changed a ton, right? We still look for resumes, we still have a screening process for that. But I think more and more, and I think you mentioned it, we're talking about doing different assessments now, other ways to understand talent and know who that person is and what they could bring to the table has been important. So just finding new ways to look for folks and not asking for the same maybe traditional things always has been important.
Awesome, thank you.
I think you captured it perfectly because we're reassessing who we're hiring and how we're hiring. And, you know, I have a high school graduate that has phenomenal technical skills. That's something that we're open to now, whereas in the past, we may have been a little bit more stringent on our requirements to get their foot in the door. The other thing is a company's culture says a lot. And when you have a really strong culture, you're good to your employees. I believe that you share that message. And that message can go out to whether it's your community partners like your universities, or you're sharing a message and supporting a statewide effort. It does tend to be contagious. And then you want to recruit more and more employees who believe in that culture and who believe in what you're doing. So, but I think you tapped into something, if I could. You mentioned the new economy initiative earlier. And it takes all of us, right? Industry has to tell the business community, you know, and the educational institutions, this is what we need for our workforce. But we also need to stand behind our institutions and get behind when they have an initiative. For those who don't know, that's really simplifying it, but it's statewide support for the university-specific engineering. And that's something that's going to be huge for Intel as we look to recruit more in that advanced manufacturing. But we have to all be in it together. And I think the Chandler Chamber's done a phenomenal job of supporting, you know, educational institutions, supporting Intel, and we've all kind of collaborated, and that will help us with our workforce pipeline.
The only thing I would add is, you know, City of Chandler is a major employer. We have 1,700 employees. And one thing that we're having to come to terms with is speed to market. And I briefly touched upon it in my slide is you got to be faster in the hiring process. I mean, I think that's something every employer is dealing with. If you make an offer back to somebody, they probably already have 2 other offers. So by the time you put a post out, start receiving resumes, you got to be prepared and willing to make an offer quickly, because that candidate's going to be on their way pretty fast. And that is not always been the case. I know in government, we historically probably moved too slow in hiring, but city leadership, city manager's office, and HR team, City of Chandler are really expediting that process. So we don't lose good candidates just because of red tape.
Mike, I think it's a great point on how do you know sooner. We still have multiple rounds of interviews sometimes for some roles, and we're really trying to force our hiring leaders to figure out how do you know sooner. And you know, it's not a fail quick or fail fast strategy. It's really just how do you know sooner and get the person on, because if you want them, someone will score those too.
We have an 89% success rate when we make an offer to an ASU student. They accept that. 89% of them accept the offer.
Which again goes to that point of local, anyway, like being in the area and having that connection, which again goes back to the point of building that pipeline locally. That yes, we can attract talent from around here, the reality in Chandler, you attract it from around the nation and around the world. But to the extent that we can build those pipelines in the K-12 with the CTE, with the community colleges and into the universities, it's just going to be key. And to that point with the new economy initiative, again, because of that drive from the business community saying, this is what we need more advanced manufacturing, we need more training, and having the support of the state and making that happen. ASU has now created a new school of advanced manufacturing. It'll actually be housed at the Polytechnic campus. At the Poly campus, there will be anyway, in partnership with the state, a science and technology center. And the university's next integrated science and technology building will be built out there to house that new school, which again will benefit just benefit everything that's happening within the state's economy. So when we get that kind of feedback, but really when we get that feedback at the university level, that drives programming. It drives, it drives change.
I would add, early offer, like you said, one of the things that the city does in partnership with USD is the Chandler Innovation Fair. It was just this past weekend. Rick's in the back, he's the major champion of that for 10 years. And that whole program, that whole day is geared towards exposing children to STEM fields early. So Intel's a sponsor, Northrop Grumman's a sponsor. There's a lot of valley-wide participation, just so that these employers are getting in front of youth early to say, hey, there are field opportunities in science and engineering that are fun and hands-on, and it's here. You don't have to think about it in some far-off place. There's people in the community that do this, and so they go out there for 10 hours on a Saturday and get to experience what science and technology looks like in action. I know ASU was there this past weekend, so those are some of the things we do to help generate those relationships and exposure early on for Chandler's youth in partnership with USD and all the other districts. So if you're not participating in Chandler Innovation Fair, sign up next year.
Well, right here locally, you have the CCA Puede Foundation, which is just an incredible work when it comes to robotics and STEM and anyway, just incredible stuff that's happening right here in Chandler. So, a third question we have for you, and then we'll open it to everybody else here. What are some of the best practices and innovative ideas you've seen when it comes to retaining workers once they've been onboarded?
I can tell you one thing that Intel does. If I'm new to Intel, I can speak to this personally. We have a buddy program. So Intel's global, and it's amazing to me at how much there is to learn about a new industry. But they assign you a buddy when you first come into the company. And this buddy just answer any and all questions. They're not typically within your department. They're within another department. You can sign up to the buddy program, in your first week there. But basically that helps us retain employees because they can ask any question they want to ask. And with new employees, you have a lot of questions. It could be about benefits. It could be about, what does this acronym mean? Because we have a lot of acronyms. Amazing to me. And so it's just extremely helpful to make you feel welcome. But in addition, it is very welcoming. So there's a new employee coming on board, they're making introductions and making sure you feel comfortable in your new environment and you know exactly where to go.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stands out to me, at least that I know I've heard from all of my employees about, are a couple of things. One, having career conversations early. So I know traditionally, at least I know I had this experience when I started someplace, the focus was, how do you get really good at the job we just hired you for? They don't typically want to talk to you about, hey, we hired you to be an attorney for X, and you're already talking about how you can get into another field that typically feels disingenuous somehow. We've really tried to change that to say, hey, I know we've hired you as an administrative assistant. What else do you think you want to do? Or is there an idea that you have 2 years from now? And even if it's like, nope, I really just want to do this and I'm not sure, that's okay, but at least inviting the idea of a career path conversation early versus someone feeling like, hey, I'm here and almost, I don't want to share with my leader that I really want to go over here. I'm going to be applying someplace else for that other role, and I'm getting this experience here. So that kind of more genuine conversation about career path has been important. And the other has really been a focusing on what's important for the individual, both financially and from their employer standpoint. So I have conversations with my employees around home ownership or whatever their goals are, and things about how we may be able to assist them with that, whether it's programming that we have or financially how they need to think about it. That just creates a different connection for them than I think was typically there. And then lastly, being shareholders, the fact that our entire company are shareholders, I think has changed the level of engagement, focus. Our stock is including great right now. Some people are very much interested in that.
Nobody
But
stops being great right now.
but you can't tell me. And you know, it's been different, right? Over the past 5 years. I mean, it has really been a great vehicle for people from a wealth generation standpoint. I think we'll continue to do that for folks, but it changes the engagement. And I think their level of commitment to the company.
I was gonna say what Art said, but I'll maybe just add a little bit of different spin is. I think generationally, there's been a major shift over the past 5-10 years. Most people coming out of college don't have any expectation, or people entering the workforce of staying in one business for one time or for a career. They're going to turn over. So what employers can do to really develop those relationships, as Art was saying, hear them as individuals, try and solve for some of their problems outside of just your employee. You come in, you punch in, you punch out. I see that from a lot of different employers being a new approach, and it you know, it's on the soft touch side, and it is much harder, I think, for businesses to respond to, because it's hard to put qualitative language or job performance into somebody's job description, measure it. Really just listening what the employees have to say and trying to be sensitive to their vision for life, that work-life balance. We're hearing a lot of that, and the companies who get that are the ones that are able to attract and retain that talent so much better.
Yeah, we've even had, I think, a difference in the way we even approach folks as they're talking about careers that may move them out of PayPal. So changing that conversation a little bit to say, hey, let's talk about it. And if I can help, I've been in this industry now for closer to 20 years, and a lot of people in the Valley, if I can help, it's just a different relationship. And it's not disingenuous, it's going to happen anyway. So we must well have an open dialogue and be supportive if we can, versus I think before, there's no way you would tell your leader, hey, I'm thinking about going to Wells Fargo or someplace else. And now it's, hey, what do you know about their culture? And what do you think about, I want to go take this role. Do I have that opportunity here? And just those open conversations that make folks.
Great insights. Any questions we have from, so Creedon, then we can go here.
Okay.
Yeah, we have time.
Good. You know, it's very heartening to kind of see, you know, the professional and the civic levels coming together and start to work on essentially a supply chain management perspective and breaking down barriers that you were kind of talking about before. And all the way from the preschool and all the way up to the 20 college graduate, you're looking at one continuum. Okay, so that's fantastic. I think there's another stage to this, and that is bringing in the community, particularly with parents. Okay, because that's the key thing in your P20. Parents are really going to make a lot of those decisions. The perspective is being a parent with, you know, going on 3 kids in school. I'm paying rent for my boy at ASU is graduating. Well, I want to get a job, so I don't have to pay his rent. And my girl at U of A paying her rent, and I got another one starting at ASU in the business school, so paying for her dorm, which is essentially rent as well. Okay, parents have that role. The interest is really financial independence, not just getting a job, but financial independence for your kids. It's not something we've really talked about here. So to articulate what you're trying to do to the street, which is the parental community, and having them understand what you're doing in a way that they can understand it, because you know we speak together professionally and policy wise and all that. That does not translate to a conversation that you have, you know, with my neighbors. They don't get it. So what I'm trying to get to here is that there needs to be another level of communication here and taking it out to the community themselves so they're on board. Because once you get the parents on board, then you get the kids on board. And now we're really rolling about developing the workforce in the community. So
Yeah, first off, congratulations. I mean, that's fantastic. You got 3 kids going through college.
getting them out's the issue.
Well, I hear you're trying to pass that on to someone else. And I'll just make a comment to yours. I think it's such an excellent point about communication, right? And always speaking, that's listening. And we need to be able to listen to folks coming into the workforce about what do they want. They don't want the same benefits. We're finding that also, right? If I tell someone, hey, we have X amount of maternity or paternity leave, that doesn't resonate in the same way that it may be used to. And so it's really, I think it's so important to ask, what are you looking for? They may say, hey, I want a lot of vacation. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to do different things. I want to be able to work remote, whatever those things are, and be able to really kind of augment what we offer versus saying, here's our benefits package. How do you like it? Right? They may not, that's not going to resonate in the same way. So I think you're right on the communication side. We have to listen to about what do folks, what are they looking for that are coming to the workforce?
I think you captured a really good point. We're constantly reevaluating, and I know right now we have a new CEO who's been there 1 year, and phenomenal energy. He's brought on great leaders, and his new executive vice president is reevaluating our entire benefits package because we're hearing employees want different things, and it's not the traditional, sick leave, all of that. They're just trying to look at the way they do things and do them differently. But they do look at the entire spectrum. I mentioned to you early on that we're helping with our parents might have an issue with daycare, and it might be emergency daycare. So we offer actually support for, they have their traditional daycare, but then all of a sudden they run into an emergency and that's not available. We reimburse employees for those daycare costs. So we're looking at the entire spectrum of an employee. Continuous learning is a huge issue, lifelong learning for us. The more you invest back in that employee, the more likely you are to retain them. So it's just a constant process of reevaluation.
Yeah, we're looking at like familiar internships as well. I think the point you made about, getting to the parents also. So if you have a child of a working or at least a, call it a contributing age or working around too, which these are internships that we can offer to kids pretty early. I had an intern, my first internship was at Honeywell at age 14. Changed the way I thought about careers and different things. And so these familiar internships, this is already someone that's there. They may have a child or, somebody in their family that might be the right person to kind of bring in. So playing with those kind of benefits or ideas also, I think it's really important.
Well, just to follow up, I think you might have missed the point of that. The point I was trying to make is that parents are going to be directing the educational pathway of their children, okay, which we call workforce development. So if you don't articulate the workforce development into what they influence, the parents, not the kids, because you're kind of talking about when they graduate from high school, we'll start working with them. I think you need not necessarily working with the kids, but working with the parents when they start in preschool. I mean, all the way, and really start to conceptualize the whole thing, but not articulating to the kids, articulating to the parents. And you get them on board, now the things start to roll. That was one point.
That's, I think, where Micah, as he talked about the innovation fair, right? Things that are happening with children, with youth, what Way does, and some other things. And also, let's be real, every parent wants for their kids to have a greater understanding of financial literacy. Something that probably is not taught nearly well enough anyway in some early grades when it could be. So there's some, I think there's some opportunities, but Mike, anything you want to add to that one?
From what I can see, and this is just my own perspective from here in Chandler, and probably the greater Southeast Valley is, there's kind of a very clear dichotomy. Well, there's parents who are really pushing that STEM approach, and then there's others who they get it, but for a point, we can do a better job of helping them understand what these career paths look like. I'm not sure how that comes about. In all honesty, I kind of get where Kurt's coming from, but we've got a community that gets education and values education in Chandler. The support, I think, is a good institution. For the institutions is there when we look at like bond overrides, they value education. How we go about articulating what those pathways look like, I gotta think about that.
We had a question here, and then we'll come up to this.
Mine was actually funny enough, dovetailing almost exactly on what Kurt had said, is that, we hear a lot as business people about this, and we understand that there's an issue, but as a parent, when you have kids in high school or college, it's crickets. So the question is, how do we help our kids? Because as a parent, you look and go, hey, opportunity for my child, right? So, but we're not, like, how do we help guide them to, in that direction, in high school, in that work direction, even in college, when we want them to be a little more independent? But I think listening to Kurt, and I had the same thought process. I think there's a gap there that, you know, we could be making for that pathway. And the Innovation Festival is fabulous, and it starts them very early. But when they're starting to look at careers, is that junior high and high school? And it's kind of funny, you start paying tens and tens of thousands of dollars for a 17 or 18-year-old to maybe go into debt to choose their life path. It'd be great if we could help them choose better.
I think part of it's exposure.
Right.
Giving them that kind of exposure, and you've got this festival, ASU has open door where you can tour every college. Basically gives you kind of an exposure into the college scene, but as a parent, attend that with your child, right? Give them exposure to what it means to go into higher education. Maybe they're interested in the planetarium, or maybe they're interested in the business school, but part of it is going to be about exposure.
My question would be, what do you think we as parents should be demanding of our current education system, or asking, I guess, is a nice way to put that. I think we have a great education system in Chandler. But what should we be asking
Yeah,
in terms of those
demanding, though.
pathways?
I think it's forums just like this for kids. I do it at Cesar Chavez for every ninth grade, not every ninth grade class, but I'm there for a lot of them. Just 'cause that's around where I was when I first came to the Valley. And we go in there and we do a program there where we just expose kids in ninth grade about the different careers that are out there. Many of them have no idea about all these other opportunities. Like I mentioned, my own experience doing an internship very early. I was testing valves for Honeywell. I had no idea they did this. And well enough, my wife works for Honeywell today. But there are different things that are opportunities that are out there that you don't necessarily know or see. And you think maybe I go to business school or I'll do different things. But I think from our education system that we bring more people in from the community to talk about what are we looking for? What job do you even do? That sort of thing, I think, changes people's minds a little bit, because what we're going to be exposed to maybe on television or in our schools right away is just a fraction of what's out there.
Yeah, Glenn, we had a question here, and then we've got lots of questions. This is great. Your hand was up and your hand was up.
Actually, Jane this is actually where I was going to go with that. It is the parent thing, because I've got two boys that are 25 and 23 right now. And when they went through high school, it was, see your counselor. Well, what do you want to do? That's the question. They have no clue. They haven't had any experience, any exposure, anything to any other field except for a book. And I think that is a real problem, because they just don't have a clue. I now have a second grader, so she is on her way up. So I'm trying to do things differently, and I'm really upset that I couldn't make that this last weekend. It was on my calendar. My sister had her bridal shower, so unfortunately we missed it. But that I saw that actually 2 months ago, put on my calendar. I was so excited for her for that. So thank you for that, and I hope that stays. But other things like that, and then also bringing these conversations into the school, or these people. This might sound a little quirky, but literally like having a science fair with you presenting so that the kids can see what you're doing, almost like kind of concept. They need to see and experience what you're talking about, not just slides or books or anything else. They really need to know what's out there and what that means to them. And if that interests them or sparks them, it has to be at an early age, because by the time they're in junior high and high school, they're picking the average classes, math, English. They're not really looking into what they really need to get to what you're also talking about. So they don't understand that concept at that age until you present it to them.
Yeah, I was at American Express in the North Park Valley for 10 years, and one of the big things that we enjoyed doing was bring kids to work day, right? So we would also do things in schools, and it wasn't just come to work and see where mom or dad sits. It was, they would go around into different departments and they would try different things out, everything from underwriting a credit card to servicing a customer that had an issue or a challenge. And there was so much excitement, I think, from kids. I mean, I took my girls when they were really little, and they enjoyed just, sitting and doing different things. So it's a different perspective, though, and I think you're right. Bringing more of that in, again, would be great.
And if we can turn that back though to the business community, that's why internships, career shadowing, mentoring programs are so important. Again, to spark that interest and to spark that desire for some of these kids as they're coming through. And oftentimes it's not just to know what you like, but it's also to know what you don't like.
No, exactly.
Right? I mean, that you think, oh, I'm interested in this, and then you go there and you're like, holy cow, I don't want to anyway. You don't want to spend the next 40 years, right? I mean, so having these opportunities and being able to think creatively about how we can partner together with the school districts, how we can work together, again, partnership, is we can be thinking that way, then again, that will just open those opportunities for our kids moving forward. In addition to, again, CTE programs that too many parents probably don't realize that their kids can finish and actually have a certificate, an industry recognized certificate, where if they want to, they can go immediately into the job force. Understanding dual credit. I have 4 children anyway, and I had a conversation with my high school senior yesterday, and I'm so grateful because when she finishes, she's going to have 29, 30 credits. That'll save me a year, right? Anyway, as a parent, that saves you money. And so I'm really grateful that we took advantage of some of those kind of things, but we really need to, anyway, talk about educating parents. Anything else you want to add on?
Well, we talked a lot about parental engagement and how critical that is, so I think it kind of covers that, but you mentioned guidance counselors, so I will just personally say I think we need more of those.
The ratio is
Very
ridiculous.
difficult to get in to see a guidance counselor, but the guidance that they can give you is absolutely critical. But partnerships, like you said it well.
Yes, please.
Thank you, guys. We have 3 companies, and actually, the general kind of company in a way, that value education, value what's going on. I hear about parental involvement, which is, I've talked about 100 times. It's super important, but one of the challenges the state faces, and one of the things that Micah talked about, our STEM fair that we had that we started 10, 11 years ago now, I don't remember. But it was the idea of starting from birth to 5 going through. And we're talking about all these great programs, we're talking about high school and things like that. It really revolves around a 20-year plan of from the time the kid comes out of the womb to the time he gets through high school in terms of paths. One of the challenges the state has, and I think I'm preaching to the choir, but how do we better educate our legislators and the people who vote for them? When I watched yesterday, 6 legislators talking about the boogeyman of education, we're putting too much money into our education, yet, to your point, we don't have enough guidance counselors, we don't have enough mental health counselors. We're so hung up on buzzwords like CRT and all this other stuff that's going on, but we're losing the focus of making sure that we have enough funding that our kids start out right and aren't behind the 8 ball. The whole birth to 5 thing is so important. If a kid can't read by the time they get to kindergarten, they're already behind. So how do you guys relate in terms of trying to educate people at the legislature, educate people when they go to the ballot box, that long-term health of the state is going to depend on, the jobs that are the kid who's 5 years old, or my grandson who's 6 months old, those jobs we don't even know about yet. So how do we do that? How do you guys as companies try and relate that, I guess?
That's a good question, and it's one of those large macro issues we approach in partnership. I think that's how we go about it. From the economic development perspective, we look at education as a net driver of the economic vitality of our state. Like I said earlier, we're about 15,000 graduates a year down just to get to the national average. And that's to remain competitive. And so I think all 3 of us up here would agree that businesses value an educated world. It provides benefits to the business community as well as back to the state in terms of tax revenue. So I think we need to stop looking at it in terms of it's just we're putting money into the education system, but it's really an investment in raising the quality of life in the state, as well as generating, like I said earlier in my presentation, a return on that investment. That dollar we put in education, and in turn we have a qualified workforce, is going to generate net positive tax revenue for the state into the future, and really almost immediately. It's net positive real quick. So I think what we have to do is really articulate how that ROI was accomplished and why we should be putting investments into areas of education. Now, putting politics and all that fun stuff aside, math is math, right? I mean, we can look at it and be like, we're gonna put $1 here, it's good business for the state, it's good for our employers, it increases the quality of life for everybody. So I think that's where we have to communicate. This is the benefit. Here is the kind of pro forma, if you will, from a business term. And this is why the state should invest in it. It shouldn't be anything other than that from the economic development perspective. Mike.
I think that's the point, right? I think it's, how do you get it down to a standpoint that's normalized for anyone to understand? And I do think, like a lot of things, right, are so wrapped up in kind of the politics of the situation. And I also think businesses can do more, right? To really kind of drive some of those things. Oftentimes, we may pivot and look at different areas. It isn't macro enough. I think you make a great point. It's a 20-year plan, right? And a lot of times we come in that last 4 or 5 years and we're looking to kind of cultivate talent. There's more we can do, but I think you're right. You have to be able to show the return on investment and the impact.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to go back, Angela, you were talking about that affordable housing type of thing. I work in the Chandler Unified School District and I oversee all the hiring there. And we're finding, people coming into the workforce, that they're not ready to be financially independent. And I know when I graduated from college, it was like I got my own place, I had my job, and I was on my path and ready to go. I didn't turn back, and we're finding right now that there's not affordable housing here. And I have a lot of people that we are now recruiting from out of state because we have to. And they can't afford to live in this area. And so they're frustrated. They come, they get someplace, they can't afford it, and then they just go back home. And we even have that for in-state people that they're quitting. They're walking out the door and they come in, they put their keys on their desk and they're out. And they're like, I'm just moving back in with my parents. And so it is very important that we need to teach them the financial piece of becoming independent, but they also need to be able to afford to live in the area. I have a daughter who graduated. I have 3 actually that graduated from state universities. 2 are in Boston, 1 here, and she's struggling right now. She's living in a 650 square foot apartment, started out at $1,000 a month. She's going into year 3 and it's now $1,500 coming up on the lease. Teeny tiny, and she's like, I don't know where I'm going to live now.
A lot of people aren't recognizing how much housing has an impact, right, on our workforce, because your daughter's example, right, she was renting, she was going to stay in that rental housing, but to be able to afford to buy a home and have that entry-level home, we're in short supply. Then when she does get into her entry-level home, to be able to move up from there again in short supply. So supply is simply just not meeting demand right now. And it's going to be an issue for all of our workforce. And it's something I think we all need to, I'm going to go back to Rick's point. It takes all of us educating, whether it's our elected leaders or otherwise, we're all in it together. So we've got to share the message and we've got to come up with some strategic solutions.
I can talk about this for hours. So it's tall. But I think, again, the issues don't exist by themselves. They're all push-pull issues that impact housing, that impact labor, that impact transportation, and in our environment. How we did it 40, 50, even 20 years ago just isn't going to work the same way as economies change, as costs change. We have to be able to adapt from a policy perspective to solve some of these problems. And to Angela's point, we've got to talk about it. And all these things are related. And I'll just be quiet. I was going to join you on that. So yeah. Right up my.
It's all about we've got to be very strategic in our messaging to make sure we educate them on what that workforce looks like, what the housing needs are going to be, exactly what it's going to be like in this business environment to recruit another intel to the state of Arizona.
Appreciate that. I think we have time for one last question.
So are you trying to get AMD moving or?
Yeah. Alex Schwein, Sukasa at home. I have a question text in from Dragon Sam. And basically summarized, I heard a lot of great info, very actionable. But if you look at the chamber membership, most of them are what, less than 20 employees? So I was wondering if you have any advice to translate the offerings that you talked about to a company, that's a little bit smaller than 20 employees.
I would say probably have an advantage in certain areas. Speed to market. It's easier to do things at a business of 20 than it is at 12,000, right? So I think, creating that culture, speed to market, and visibility are probably things that smaller businesses can do with more agility than larger businesses.
I'd also say there are, economies of scale or at scale working together. We host small businesses at PayPal all the time and just talking about different things they can do to be more effective as a business, right? And something obviously that's beneficial to us as well. Then have to feel like you're going it alone as a small business. It can be something that you can work along in networks. And I'm not sure, we all always think of it that way. It's not an adversarial or a competitive thing all the time. There's quite a bit of alliances that can be formed. I think it can also be helpful.
And just to jump back in, I touched part of my presentation, but I think smaller businesses can really get organized around their specific training needs and specifically apprenticeship programs. You just don't see apprenticeship programs like you used to in the trades or in the restaurant industry. And I think there's opportunities to scale those back up to where they once were. And that's where the business community can really take that leadership position, saying, this is what we need. I'm going to go work with my peer companies, and we're just going to do this because we know we need this to have a business. Those business owners are going to benefit the most.
Hey, Micah, I talked to the guys in the trades. They have the opposite complaint. It says we have these programs and we can't fill them. So there's some sort of disconnect on the communication, and those are good jobs. I mean, you come out as a electrician, journeyman, or whatever, you're making 60 grand a year with no debt. Doesn't take care of your debt. So somehow we got to get that straightened out.
Well, to Art's point earlier, she talked about runway, and especially in a small business, when you know exactly what it is that you need, being able to reach out and having an apprenticeship program, or anyway, even mentoring, right, and shadowing and reaching down into the high schools. And anyway, just thinking about what those needs are, it seems that, again, that can really be a strength that you may not be as incumbent as some of the larger businesses as well. And Angela, anything you wanted to?
I just want to say thank you to the Chandler Chamber. This is an extremely important conversation. Maricopa County is going to grow their workforce by 36% by 2030. So having this conversation now shows the leadership of the chamber, and I appreciate you all having us today.
Appreciate that. Art, any final comments you want to?
You said it well. Just thank you. I think it's a great conversation. Let's continue to have it. I think my contact information is out there as well. So I'll make sure it is. If there's something I can do to help, please let me know.
Appreciate that. Micah?
Again, Chandler Chamber, thanks for being leader in the space and proud of us. And it doesn't need to be an emotional conversation with education. It's quantify the benefits to our community. Just look at it from that perspective.
Well, and if you notice, Terry had to duck out, but the reason is because it's Chamber Day at the state capitol. So anyway, to the question earlier, that's exactly, trying to articulate, talk to those of our elected officials today is exactly what Terry's doing. That's what the chamber does, is bring those people, those voices together. Could you join me in just thanking our panelists today? Have any